Hey guys, my name is Zan. I'm going to be talking about person first versus identity first language today. This was something that I have recently sort of come across. I didn't know what these two were, and actually that there was a difference between these two before like 2 months-ish ago. So I did actually quite a bit of research on these two, because if you know me, you know that I'm a little research mole, and I'm always buried in like academic research and finding information out because I'm a knowledge hound. But I did a bunch of research actually on, both sides of, not really the argument, I guess debate, both sides of the debate between person first and identity first language. And I took some time to kind of formulate my own opinion on it, so I'm going to be sharing a little bit about that. So first of all, what is person first and what is identity first language? So when we talk about person first language, in reference to people with disabilities, in reference to people with disabilities, person first language is saying a person with a disability. On the other side of that is identity first language, which is saying disabled person. So some people that like person first identity will say that they like it because they are a person first, and that their disability does not define who they are, that they are human, that they are a person first and foremost, and that is the only thing that should define them. On the other hand, people who support identity first language say that their identity as a disabled person is a huge part of who they are, and they feel like saying it the other way around. They feel like giving into person first language is sort of, I don't want to say erasing who they are, because it's not. From what I've gathered from the research that I've done and listening to, people's different opinions and all this stuff, it's not quite so heavy-handed as erasure is, but that's kind of almost how it feels. The other part of that is people who subscribe to identity first language say that person first language is ableist led, and not only that, but people don't usually say, like, a man with blackness, or a person with womanness, or a man who is black, or a person who is a woman. Usually, generally, they don't say it like that. If someone's going to be referencing somebody, they will say a black man or a woman. So there's kind of a little bit more information out there on why people support identity first language than there is why people support person first language. I wasn't able to find quite as much support for person first language than I did for identity first language. So anyway, after I've, kind of did all this research and listened to, everybody's opinions and everything, I kind of came to my own conclusion that I'm kind of neutral on it. I kind of fall in the middle with it. I think both sides have really valid points. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I lean slightly more towards identity first than I do person first. And the reason for that is, yes, I am a person. Yes, I am a human being. Yeah, I'm disabled, and that's a huge part of who I am and what I can do and what I can't do. But if somebody wants to call me a person with a disability, then that's okay. If somebody wants to call me a disabled person, that's okay too. Neither term offends me necessarily. I do agree with the fact that, or not the fact, but the opinion that identity first language is better because people in general conversation don't usually say a man who is black, or a person who is a woman, or a person with womanness, or a man with blackness, or whatever the case may be. So why should we as disabled people have it any different? So I do agree with that, and I'm okay with that. On the other hand, though, with person first identity, it's like, yeah, I am a person, and if you're looking at me, you should look at me as a human rather than just look at me as my disability, necessarily. I think, though, that if we live in a world where people have to say the person first and then the identifier after that to remind them that everybody is a person first, it's kind of a sad place to be, honestly. If we have to remind ourselves that people are people no matter what their identity is, that's pretty sad. We should be treating everybody like they are people no matter what their identity is, whether they are disabled or black or LGBTQIA+, Muslim, Christian, white, anything like that. We should be treating everybody like they are people first, no matter what their identity is. So it shouldn't necessarily matter that I'm identifying as a disabled person or I identify as a queer person, because I should be treated like any other human being, regardless of what my identity is. So there's kind of, ups and downs to both sides. And I think sometimes in general conversation, even people who do subscribe to identity first, depending on, this is getting a little technical, depending on their, sentence structure and stuff like that, and, how they're constructing the sentence that they're saying, sometimes will say people with disabilities, just because that, when we speak, we have sort of a natural variance in how we refer to people and things, especially identities anyway. And I do the same thing too. I don't 100% of the time always say a disabled person. Sometimes I will say people with disabilities, just because I have a natural variance in the way that I reference things. I personally don't really have a preference for one or the other, but if I absolutely had to pick, I would be more open to identity first, I think, than person first. Again, for the same reason that we shouldn't have to remind ourselves that people are people. That should be just automatic. So yeah, there's kind of the rundown on person first and identity first language. So yeah, if you guys have questions or comments, if you want to share your own opinions, please feel free to do so. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. Just drop me a comment, and as always, please be respectful in the way you word things, and if you have questions, please be respectful in the way that you ask your questions, but questions and comments are always welcome. So, with that, I will see you guys in the next video.